Good evening, everybody. Before we start the meeting, I could ask members, officers and members of the public in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback, please. And any remote participants to keep their camera and microphone off unless they wish to speak, as this can affect the quality of the meeting. This meeting is being live webcast and the recording stays on the council's website. Welcome everybody to the hybrid Western Area Committee meeting on the 31st of August. I'd like to welcome members of public attending remotely as well. Following officers are in attendance from Swale Borough Council, Head of Housing, Community and Services, Charlotte Hudson, Policy and Management Officer, Janet Dart, and Senior Conservation and Design Officer, Jamil Kishore. Thank you. And I'd also like to welcome others in attendance, parish councillors, Councillor Gareth Randall. Right. Okay, we're not sure who's here. I'll be asking those around to introduce themselves shortly. That's probably a better idea, I think. Yeah, and Councillor Rich Lehman and Councillor Mike Baldock from KCC. I would ask those attending, if they wish to speak, is to raise their hand and speak and you'll then in turn be invited to speak in turn. All right. Could you please state your name, the organisation you represent? Likewise, could anyone attending remotely please mute their microphone until they speak and indicate in the instant messenger if they wish to speak. Any member of the public that uses the I am inappropriate may be removed from the meeting. Agenda item 1, emergency evacuation procedure. Please be aware of the evacuation procedures to follow in the event of an emergency. There is no scheduled test of the fire alarm during this meeting. If the alarm does sound, please leave the building quickly without collecting any of your possessions, using the doors signed as fire escapes, and assemble outside where directed. Await instructions before re-entering the building. Should anyone require assistance in evacuating the building, please make the Swale Borough officers aware of any special needs so that suitable arrangements may be made in the event of an emergency. Do we have anybody? No, that's great. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
I just have apologies from Councillor Roger Clark.
I'd like to do the introductions now. So if we could go around officers and parish councillors, please introduce yourself. So at least I know who I'm talking to when someone raises there. I will probably forget your names, but you're going to say that when you put your hand up. I'm sure you are. So we'd like to start off with the introduction.
I think you might know who I am. This wife.
That's not the introduction.
Councillor Sarah Stephen, Woodstock Ward.
Councillor Chris Palmer from Newton and Upchurch Ward.
I'm Councillor Richard Palmer from the same ward, Hartley, Newton and Upchurch, and I'm also the Newton Parish Council representative here as well tonight. Thank you.
Councillor James Hunt, member for the Meads.
And Kavanagh for Road Park and Borden, and also Bobbing Parish Council, but not representing Bobbing tonight. Councillor Parish Council.
Brian Clark from Redcar Parish Council.
Graham Adcock, former, member of the public, former chairman of Park Parish Council. Barbara Adcock,
Mike Baldock, member for Borden and Grove Park and KCC Swale West.
David Priestley from Redcar Parish Council.
Gay, Redcar Parish Council.
Steve Thomas, Highway Parish Council.
Russ Richardson, Bobbin Parish Council.
Angela Gladwin, Bobbin Parish Council, but I'm a member of the public.
Okay, thank you.
Lee Burgess, Council Parish Council.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Are there anybody, any members have any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Agenda item 4, minutes. I'll ask members if they agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of June 2023, minute numbers 75 to 86 as a correct record.
Jen, did you want me to propose a change, didn't you?
Yes, or an addition, I think it was it?
It was, what was it?
No, I don't think we can do that.
It was,
It was the action for transfer of land, to get the information. Transfer of land.
yes, there's an action to transfer, to gather, details of our land ownership in the Swale, in the Western area, potential future transfer.
So are we agreed, other than that?
Agreed.
Yeah. Agenda item number 5, Redfern Hartlet Conservation Areas. I'd like to invite Jamil Bishore, the Senior Conservation and Design Officer in attendance, to give us a presentation and update members on to the
Share. You've shared. Are you one of the teams? Yeah. Okay. Should get something. Don't think I have the invite. Apologies, slight technical.
Don't get that with paper.
No.
But it makes you human, because we all have them.
You send me the.
No. Technology is here to help us.
Okay, Paul.
Jem's always right. Occasionally. It does work.
See them put it out of office.
Easy.
Oh, that's sweet.
Anyway, it took us half an hour to get to wake the hour.
Oh, okay. Just trying to.
Want to wake up to it?
No.
She should.
I did them invite first. We're learning on the hoof, yeah.
share.
Was that it? Yes, that's it. Just start sharing now.
There we go.
Got it.
Is it picking us up still?
Yes, we're still.
Happy with my chair.
Yeah, I told you it was.
Hey, everybody. You guys know more about Bredgar and Hartlip than I do, but I'll do my best. Peter Bell did the conservation area review for both the areas. And we've just concluded public consultation. It closed on 14th of August. We've had quite a detailed response from Bredgar Parish Council. It's been really helpful. And we've had quite a few responses from local residents of Hartlip, which has been really useful. And they're so useful that I'm still taking time to go through all of them and still working through the responses. But they're very good and better for the appraisal document after it kind of comes out. So yeah. So Bredgar Conservation Area was originally designated in November 1973, and it has gone through a review since it had a review in 2006, and then at that time it was extended, and an appraisal, small form of appraisal, was added to it. Hartlip was first designated in 1970, July 1970, and it was extended and redesignated in 1999. And the character appraisal was also included at that time. The Listed Buildings and Conservation Area Act requires us to review conservation areas from time to time. And Swale Heritage Strategy, which was adopted in March 2020, resulted in a stronger commitment by the council to ensure that its conservation areas are reviewed more regularly. Review of Bredgar and Hartlip conservation areas was not included in the work program in the initial 3-year action plan, but with Western Area Committee's funding, we were able to appoint a consultant to undertake this work. And now the work, the review work has finished. We've concluded the public consultation, and so the legislative and policy framework for conservation areas and their review. There's the Listed Buildings and Conservation Area Act 1990, which requires us to review them. It requires us to maintain conservation areas as an area of special architectural and historic interest, and the character or appearance of which is desirable to preserve or enhance. Historic England provides two main guidance. I mean, there are lots of guidance from Historic England, but the two main one are on conservation area appraisal, designation and management, and setting of heritage assets. And At local level, the policies and guidance are the adopted Swale local plan, emerging replacement local plan, and conservation area supplementary planning guidance. The purpose, status, and benefits of appraisal documents. Conservation areas, they need to be reviewed regularly. They need to be reviewed regularly. It's also about managing development. It's not about just fossilizing or preserving an area. It's about managing. Things change, requirements change, areas change. And how do we maintain the historic significance of the area? And that's why it's important to review them regularly. And it's important to also assess what the requirements are, what the development pressures are, and how, and recording, if it's changing, is it changing for better, or can it be managed better? And what kind of guidelines can be put in so that it can be managed better? And that is the main purpose of conservation area. And it provides, in planning terms, it's a material consideration. Any appraisal document provides material consideration for any proposed development, any changes, or it really provides a good set of guidelines to again, repeating again and again, managing an area and its historic significance. The consultation process is conducted in line with the adopted statement of community involvement, where we undertook 6-week public consultation. The documents were available to view on Swale Borough Council website. Notification letters were sent to those directly or indirectly affected by proposed boundary changes. Historic England and Kent County Council were formally consulted. And like I said in the beginning, any feedback received will be fully considered and reported on. And they may result in making further changes to the appraisal document. Bredgar is a small rural settlement which developed from a medieval manorial farming community. It has a strong visual identity centered around the pond, the war memorial, the parish church, and the street. The medieval parish church, the Victorian village school, and the farm shop provide a visual focus to the village, contributing to its life and vitality. There are several listed buildings and quite a few non-designated buildings and structures and buildings of local merit have been identified as a process of this exercise. There's quite a mix of traditional building styles, forms, and vernacular building materials, which clearly illustrate the history and development of the village. Trees make a significant contribution to the character of Bredgar Conservation Area. Boundary walls, fences, and railings, they make a distinct contribution. And overall, there's a very strong relationship between the village and the surrounding landscape. And that can be experienced through views and vistas to and from the village and through the public footpath network. During the review process, there was consideration given to whether the boundary should be changed or extended or amended. And so area west to include parts of Silver Street and north to include more of the street were considered, but these areas were, it was felt that they're separated from the historic core of the village, and they're separated by quite a bit of modern development, so to speak. They're almost like suburbs of the historic core. And they in themselves didn't really contribute to the historic significance of the conservation area. And therefore it's recommended that boundary should not be revised at the present time for Bredgar. The proposed management plan focuses on the public realm and the trees to a very large extent, along with, of course, we have householders alterations, and we don't have any buildings at risk in Bredgar, but the review document has identified a lot of buildings of local merit. So an audit of public signage is definitely needed within Bredgar. An audit of street furniture to establish whether street furniture is necessary, needs to be well designed and appropriately located. An audit of overhead supply lines and poles with the statutory undertakers to establish whether there is scope to remove any overhead cables or poles. There are quite a few in Bredgar. And perhaps to relocate services underground. Replacement of concrete highway curbs with more traditional curbs would definitely benefit. And ongoing light touch management of the village pond. A more detailed audit of trees and hedgerows may be undertaken to establish whether there is any scope for better management, additional protection through tree preservation orders or for further planting. And positive management may occasionally involve removal of trees to maintain any significant views, but then there has to be a balancing act between whether the tree is more important or age of the tree or the views. So that's again a management. Yes.
In Borden, we've got two conservation areas, because we had to be heart of the village, and then some modern housing. And there's another conservation area on the corner, Harmon's corner. Could we not have would it not prefer a separate conservation area for Silver Street?
I think this was one of the questions raised in the feedback that we received about satellite conservation areas or a separate conservation area. There is no mechanism for satellite conservation areas, but if an area is considered to be of significance enough, then it can be considered to be an independent conservation area. And that is something, I mean, we've done that with Rodmersham Church Street, as you're aware. That is something that can be considered. Yeah.
Just as we're on that point, I think probably as from Bredgar Parish Council, we'd be thinking more of Bexham as being the satellite, actually in the Silver Street. I think that was really when we. I will wait till you finish and then probably speak. But that just on that point, we were going to suggest Bexham rather than Silver Street as being the satellite village.
Because it has a critical mass, doesn't it?
Yeah, it has a separate. It's a separate identity, but it is very important in the parish.
Yes, I think Bexon, I mean, having been to Bexon once, it can be a conservation area, can be designated if we look at it in more detail. Designating new conservation areas, I mean, as you all are aware, it becomes a matter of priority. If it's under massive development pressure, then one can prioritize that. But if there isn't, then it kind of goes in the low priority. So that's something that needs to be looked at.
Like to be there and being considered.
Yes.
You decide the priorities.
Yeah. Yeah, I think certain amount of exercise will have to be undertaken to determine, does it merit enough significance to be considered as a separate conservation area. Any more questions on Bradker? No. Moving on to Hartlip. Hartlip is a small settlement which again developed from medieval farming community. It has a very strong visual identity centered around the street. Medieval parish church and Victorian village school provide a focus to the community at the center of the village. Several listed buildings, many non-designated buildings and structures, mix of traditional building styles, forms, and vernacular building materials, all expressing the history and growth of the village. And there's a very strong relationship again between the village and the surrounding landscape, experienced through views and vistas to and from the village and through the public footpath network. It's in close proximity to suburban Newington and Rainham, but it retains its own very strong identity and place. And buildings and public domain are generally well cared for and in good condition. For Hartlip, regarding boundary changes, there are 3 areas that have been proposed for boundary change. So the first one is right at the bottom, you can see in yellow. That's the Mount Lane. And it's literally a strip of road which is on the edge of current boundary, which is proposed to be included. The second one is Cuckoo Orchard with associated buildings and farmhouses within it. And the third one is Redcliffe Chase and Keith Styles. So the current, if you look at it, the current conservation area boundary excludes Mount Lane. And Mount Lane is quite a special little lane, which does contribute to the conservation area and is felt that it should be included along with its banks and trees and hedgerows, and it would kind of make it complete in a way. That's one. Cuckoo Orchard, the orchards around Hartlip, as you approach Hartlip, the orchards do kind of give you that sense of arrival. They, you can't possibly go about including all of them, but this one is particularly special. It's located between the street and Dane Lane, and it slopes gently towards Dane Lane. So there's quite a bit of view, and it really forms almost a part of the village. It's not like it's just going on and on into the horizon. It really forms part of the village. And it has been historically used as an orchard. So I think including this part of Cuckoo Orchard up till the Dane Lane would ensure that Hartlip Conservation Area, it kind of completes the conservation area by including the orchard within the new amended boundary. And then there are these 2 properties right at the north end of the conservation area. And these houses, I mean, there's, from map regression, they date from 1906 and 1938. So they're not very old, but they occupy a strategic position. And again, when you enter or leave the village, there's this orchard on one side and these two properties on one other side. It's almost like that sense of arrival. And they do have architectural features which are worth maintaining, worth keeping. They are good. They are of good quality, and in including these two properties would ensure that the early 20th century architecture is also included within the conservation area. Very similar to Bredgar, the management plan focuses around public realm and trees and plantation. There's signages, street furniture, overhead supply lines, and replacement of concrete highway curbs, management of trees, and maintaining or removing trees to manage the views. Next steps are that we're aiming to present our report to Planning and Transport Policy Working Group on 19th of September, the forthcoming meeting. And all the comments that have been received, the appraisal document's going to be updated based on the comments received. And any comments that are not being included in the document, a rationale would be provided for why the document's not being amended because of that. So all of that table with rationale and response is going to be presented. And that would then go on to the Planning and Resources Committee on 18th of October, recommending adoption of the appraisal document. Once the Planning and Resources Committee agrees to that, then the appraisal document is further updated to a final adopted version. And that is published on Swale Borough Council website. And then a 21 days press notification has to be given to London Gazette and local newspaper. And once that 21-day period passes, then the document is considered adopted. And we're hoping we'll have it done by we're kind of estimating it'll be done by end of December, because the document needs to be, like when we go to Planning and Transport Policy Working Group, it'll be shown as track change document, that this was the original document. This is what is, when they agree to that, then that document is again updated for the adopted version. So there are several iterations that happen to the appraisal documents. And following the adoption of the documents, then meetings can take place between the Borough Council, the Parish Council, and any other relevant party to move forward with items within the management guidelines or to progress in terms of maintaining the conservation areas. Thank you.
Yes, Graham Adcock. Prior to this audit being commenced, the matter was discussed by the Harley Parish Council, and there are a couple of things that we asked to be looked at, and what they were relating to the 1999 review, when at the very last moment, Game Close and Munns Lane were put forward as areas which should be included in the conservation area. I asked the team to look at that, which you did, and you didn't include it. And I don't think there was a strong case at all to do that, quite frankly. I accompanied the team. Thank you very much for the way you looked after us all with Richard. And it was a very successful visit, I thought. The three things really which the then Parish Council was looking for was maintaining the existing conservation area. Secondly, looking at areas which could perhaps be included, which you did. And finally, we were very concerned about the fact that a lot of people had moved to the village from out of London and didn't understand conservation areas. And a lot of work was going on which really required approval. And as a result, the amount of enforcement cases which came to Swell Borough Council was rather large. And we wondered whether there was anything that could be done about that. And I think you've helped the village by, the parish by identifying those areas which need a little bit more protection. And the question of enhancing must always be looked at. Why you haven't received a comment, I don't know. In the meantime, of course, we had an election and there is only one parish councillor now who was on the parish council at that time. And I don't think many of the parish councillors had much experience in planning, and certainly none of conservation areas. So that's perhaps why you haven't.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for, again, from a breaker point of view, we're very pleased with the new proposed review. And I think we accept all the things that you're saying. We discussed as you, when you came around the village, that were the possibilities of extending and perhaps to some of the other sites and agreed with the results that came out. So from that point of view, we're very pleased with it. It's a significant improvement on what we had before. We accept all the management plan things as well. It's given us a focus on, from a parish council point of view, on things that we can perhaps try to influence to improve the village as well. So I think that was the main point of it. I was going to raise at this point the possibility of Hexham being considered in future, which I think is something perhaps we could consider. I did. David is our heritage councillor, so I don't think there was anything he wanted to say. But basically, we're pleased with the progress you made and what's been done. Thank you very much.
So,
Thank you. Vivian Wilson Thompson. First of all, on Hartlepool, I have sent you comments anyway for everyone else. I grew up in Hartlepool and my mother's lived there for 50 years, she's still there. I went right around the village and I have to say, I think the extensions are inspired. Absolutely brilliant. The view as you come out of the back of the church down across what we describe as Crickle Orchard has been like that for as long as I know, and it is part of the character of the village. Mountain Aim has a very, very particular atmosphere if you ever go down it. And when I read Peter Bell's description of why and the history of it, it made a lot of sense about the atmosphere, which is very difficult to pinpoint. And the other blue bits, those buildings, who knows why they were never in the first, they're just a natural part of it. And I would like to say, having looked at all the conservation areas myself and commented all of them, Robertshire and all of them, I'd just like to put forward to say a very big thank you to the team, also to Peter Bell, who I think has done an absolutely excellent job, all of them, and has brought all the heritage together.
Councillor Cameron.
I'm sorry, I haven't got a lot of experience of the conservation area. I see your recommendation of reducing the overhead power lines. How does that happen? Is it when there's a problem with one, you encourage the power network to put them underground? How is it funded? How does it work?
So we've had some experienced conversations in Bredgar about this. So it helps if you're in an AONB for a start, because there is funding available to do that. But outside of an AONB, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. But in a conservation area, you've got a bit more negotiating powers. If they're coming to renew cables, I mean, what they did in Romsham is they got about 20 cables and they made them into 5 thick ones. So I'm not sure that that's an improvement.
But it is a possibility
It is a possibility, and I think you need to put it on their radar by writing to them. Is that right? Yeah.
Thank you.
We did early on discuss Iwade, and it was felt that there wasn't enough of a large area in Iwade to do a conservation area. But we did talk about, I think it's in Article 4. Can we give that a push?
Article 4 is a good policy, but it works better in urban areas. And I think Bredgar and Hartlip are very rural in the sense every property is unique. And it's kind of maintained as that little hamlet. It has its own beauty and special characteristic. And Article 4 tends to work much better on a set of Victorian terraces, for example, or shop fronts, or so it works better in urban environment.
Yeah, but I mean, the area we were talking about was in Iwade. It's that, yeah, I mean, a lot of cottages opposite the pub next to the church. It's that small area talking about an Article 4, not regular Hartley. You might not have been involved,
no.
but I'm just wondering if we can revisit that, because it was something we were going to do.
I suppose the question is, what do you need to do in order to put an Article 4 in?
I think Simon just declared it, or Jamil.
Because I suppose that was one of the things we're looking at in Robinson, was whether we could look at an Article 4, because we've got a school that's not listed, but if they then put in UPVC windows.
Yes.
You know, and this is a difficulty, like there's areas in Tunstall, for example, where things have changed and you end up with, and then everyone starts doing it, you start losing your picket fences and it erodes then the whole sort of look of the conservation.
Well, within a conservation area, they shouldn't be putting PVC windows anyway. And that's something.
Well, there's been I think when you look at, and I'm thinking of a particular row of houses, that has happened. And when we've asked for enforcement to look at it, we've been sent round the loop on that. And especially when it comes to colour and whether you can change from light to dark, you know, there's a fad for having grey windows or fad for having, you know, fake brown plastic ones, you know, that sort of thing. So I think some clear direction on that would be useful.
Councillor Palmer.
I've got to say, I think sometimes maybe members of the public listen, and I think it's always a good idea if we talk about Article 4 to actually say what it is. It removes the permitted development right. And in fact, the last one that I've been involved in was in Hartlip, which removed permitted developments to use for group fairs, outdoor cinemas on some farmland. So there is perhaps a call for them, but it's an Article 4 removes permitted development.
Yeah.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I was going to ask if we could perhaps have Article 4 for the next agenda, next meeting for discussion.
Sure, it's possible. Yeah. Anybody else got any questions on this item? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Jamil. That was very interesting. Well done.
Yes, well done.
Now we've got a lot of system. We continue on with agenda item number 6. A short presentation on the comments led by myself. Please note that Councillor Richard Palmer is chair of the parking policy working group, and if you would like to,
I'll come up there, yeah.
you want to, yeah, and then Janet will then give you a full report on it. Where we stand.
And then
You want me to do it?
Yeah, I think you to do it now. I'll click through the slides
Yeah.
when you're.
Okay. Well, Swale Council, believe it or not, doesn't have a parking policy, or not one that we could locate. So it was thought that it would be a good idea to have a parking policy, because parking is probably one of the most controversial issues you'll ever come across. And we felt from the community committee side, where parking falls under, it would be a good idea to have a formal parking policy. And it was agreed to form a parking policy working group, which is formed of members of the community committee. And the membership has been drawn up, sort of met twice, and has discussed some of the main themes that we feel should be in the policy. It's not an end-all list. The idea is sometimes you can be in the room, you think you've got it all right, and somebody outside the room comes up with the best idea. And that's the idea. What have we missed? What should be included, or perhaps what shouldn't be included? So if we move on the scope of the policy working group have proposed certain themes for the draft policy to include review of existing tariffs compared to other Kent local authorities. Are our tariffs in the car parks, are they competitive, and how do they compare with other local authorities within Kent? We also had the idea that perhaps we should consider differential parking for some car parks that may be in the town, and others that are not so close to the town centres may have a different parking regime or parking tariff. So there could be is that worth considering? Should we be charging in all car parks? Should all car parks fall into a tariff regime, and what might that be? People have talked about evening parking. We're doing a review of the evening parking. There are charges up to midnight, and there are various comments that have come back and said, we feel that's a bit on the unfair one. We go out for an evening and it could cost us £5. I'm trying to think, £5.40, I think it is, £5.40 to park. And if we go there early at 6 o'clock, 4 hours later, we've got to rush back to our car. We can't put another ticket on it because of the restrictions. It's a short stay. So that they feel disadvantaged. So some people have suggested perhaps a fixed tariff throughout the evening. Whatever that tariff might be, we don't know. But currently, motorbikes aren't charged. So should we consider charging for motorbikes? But that's a bit awkward from my point of view to put a ticket onto a car, onto a motorbike, a parking ticket. But I'm not talking about an enforcement ticket. I'm talking about the ticket from the machine. But then perhaps they could use Ringo. So there's some of the things that have been thrown in. And the next slide sort of continues with that. Consider if we could increase the times of controlled parking zones, because again, and this probably applies to people in the towns where there are controlled parking zones, of course, they are run up from 8 till 6 in the evening. Well, parking has been increased, so more people now park where people have paid and expect to come home and be able to park outside their house. So there's always a knock-on effect to whatever you do, and maybe we should look at that to coincide with what the car parks are, or whatever people may come back on the consultation and recommendations. I mean, as a council, we decided long ago when we put the machines in, we've recently renewed the machines, that we have all types of payment acceptable, cash, card, telephone, and apps. There's only a few car parks, if they're way out of town or very small, that they might not be taking cash. So, and I'd like to see, hopefully, that policy to stay for many years to come. And to set out some of the principles we follow for enforcement, and to consider how we can link in the policy to the climate emergency, cleaner vehicles, active travel, that sort of thing. So that's it, basically. What we're trying to find out from yourselves. We've come to the area committee, so the next steps is the questions. Do you think the proposed scope is right? And it's your opportunity to come back and tell us anything you think that may be missing from that. I know it's a quick. If you've got anything you want to add, or you feel like we want to look at, or anything you want to mention, please feel free. And I think Janet will take the notes, and then we can feed that back into the general mix of things when it's all been looked at, and hopefully come up with a policy that's fit for a good number of years throughout the borough. So I'll throw the floor open to anyone with any questions.
Councillor Sarah Stephen.
Yes, the volunteers, but most of the comments that I've had as the councillor is from voluntary people, so say the Swallows or Faversham, and that's costing them to volunteer, and it's making it unaffordable to volunteer. Should we
Okay.
be thinking about doing some permits, because somebody that's volunteering 2 or 3 evenings a week, £15 is a lot of money, when they're actually helping other people in the community. So that's the biggest number of comments and emails I've had is about
And that's,
voluntary organisations.
and that's being thrown into the mix. It will be looked at because I think there's nothing off the table. But basically, we can't guarantee anything this evening. But that is one of the areas that's being looked at.
Councillor Bonny.
Yeah, so I think quite a few of the comments I've had have been around the nighttime economy and people having to dash back to their cars because, as you say, they shouldn't stay car parks. That's one that I'd like looked at. The other one is about parking on pavements. I think for the rural villages where we do have pavements, which are very few of them, it's about how we enforce around that. And is it in the scope? Can it be in the scope? If it can't, and I know you've had some more recent guidance about what can be done about parking on pavements.
Yeah, parking on, it's a bugbear. Parking on pavement, it can only be enforced by Swale Borough Council enforcement officers if there is a traffic regulation order in place. I.e. double yellow line, zigzags, single yellow line, or there's a plate that says a parking restriction applies here. Otherwise, it's down to Kent Police. If someone parks on the pavement in such a way that it causes an obstruction, and that's the word they've used. I have raised this several times with the police. I get the same answer. A vehicle that someone can walk past, even if it's a buggy or a pushchair or a wheelchair, if they can get past it and it's parked on the pavement, it is not causing an obstruction. The police will do nothing about it. If someone parks fully on the pavement and completely blocks the pavement, that is classed as obstruction. The person can phone the police and report it to them. The police have said to me they will attend, but it may take them several hours to get there. If the person in the meantime walks out into the road and around the car, they have not committed the offence of obstruction. I don't make the laws. I've just tried to explain as it's been put to me. I'll come to Christine in a minute, but Graham, I know you've had experience of this.
Yeah, something else I've just given up. I've been a member of the advisory board of parking traffic penalty parking tribunal for the last 20 years. And the word cash cows keeps coming up. And I meet regularly with members, senior members of the AA and the RAC and so on. And there's a real strong feeling about what's going on in the parking world at the moment. Parking on pavement's been discussed in Parliament for about 7 years now. And I helped. And basically, there are some local authorities that couldn't manage without parking on pavement. Parts of London must have parking on pavement. So to try and get consistency between all local authorities is almost impossible. The police are really interesting. There is always an option, the obstruction option, but really the police aren't interested in cars obstructing pavements. And I've observed many times on the A2, people having to walk out on the road with their cars because someone's parked on the pavement. Totally unsatisfactory. The other thing is clean air zones, which is a popular thing at the moment. I think of the 302 local authorities in England and Wales that have prioritised the parking aspect, there are only 11 areas that have gone for clean air zones. And in Birmingham, it's totally haphazard, and they had to stop doing it. First of all, they didn't warn people that it was going to happen, so they were told they should have warned. But secondly, people perhaps only go to Birmingham once or twice in their lifetime, and suddenly they get landed. There is so much argument that goes on that I'd be very careful what you take on board in this. The other thing is that's going on in the background. They are looking at on the street parking fines for offences committed, like overstaying and so on. And local authorities, I think, local government association are pressing for those rates to be raised. And again, there's going to be a lot of public opposition to that. So go slowly.
Oh, parking is a very emotive issue. It's always a problem until we're doing it. But it is, I mean, the appeals tribunal, I would say, is one of the best tribunals I've ever been in front of. I've never lost yet. Chris.
I was just going to say about how frustrating the square enforcement officers are, because at the top of our road, double yellow lines, cars parked constantly on pavement, on the double yellow lines. I've had to reverse from head-on collisions several times because cars parked both sides and the car has shot round the corner, you have to slam your brakes or reverse out the way. Enforcement officers never come down Station Road, and yet we do a charity quiz night to raise money for a good cause in the village hall, and the enforcement officers come round while we're raising money for charity, and they issue, I think there were probably about 30 tickets because people's tyres were on the white lines of parking bays. And that is the sort of thing it infuriates me. You know, Richard was able to take on some of the cases and because the signage was so poor, but I just don't get it. You know, dangerous parking is ignored by the officers. Yeah, people at a charity fundraising then all get tickets. Doesn't make sense to me at all.
I mean, that's interesting because I would say they do enforce, and I have seen tickets being issued out at the top of Station Road. However, the trouble is, it is very, enforcement officers can't be about all the time. If, separate to this, we're also doing a parking report, which will show you where the hotspots are, and it will also show you where the civil enforcement is taking place, etc., and how much is taken in from fines and how many people go to appeal and how many people are successful at appeal, etc. But yeah, I think there are certain places where enforcement is bad.
I've seen the advert before we get a few tickets tonight.
I think, I think, did you put your hand up? No, sorry, James.
And then me.
And then Sarah, yeah?
I think on that, I think it does need to be looked at how often they come out of the town centre. I think that's what I find, especially with Bobbin School.
Yep.
If I go and ask them to be there, they will come out pretty much the next day, but we're always told they won't go until they're told to go somewhere. I mean, there's too much concentration in the town centres. They need to start looking.
Yeah. I will ask if there's any way they can send round where they have been. Yeah.
And with the, when this has been looked at, something that I think does need to be looked at is the residence permits on the streets. In the past, I know, especially Archers Park, Mike will know about the issues that's there. One of the things that comes up with moving residents is residents parking permits, and why can't they have one? And I've always been told it's because they only do residents parking permits in town centres. Now, if we haven't got a policy on parking, who's making that decision to say that we only do parking in town centres?
Person on the end of the phone, I would imagine.
Exactly.
And that could be part of the policy.
Yes,
What
that needs to be looked at. Of what actually, where can resident permits, and if it is only a town centre, we need to have a policy on that. So
Yeah, because if you live by a rural railway station, that could be a problem. And that might need a zone or there's many other things, but that's all part of the things to feed into the mix. Sarah, sorry.
The other big gripe obviously is school parking, and it's the buses. They park over double yellow lines. We don't see our enforcement officers there very often. Is there any way that we can be more forceful towards all the bus parking, the parent parking, the children, the actual pupils? And we haven't had a reply from Force School about parking outside the school. And obviously with that goes the idling. As soon as it gets a bit cool, they're sitting in their cars idling and there's no one to enforce that.
Well, there should be, there is an anti-idling.
Yeah,
And again,
so it's issues with schools.
If you know of areas, feed it in. I think parking outside schools is going to be a very tough nut to crack. Because how are you going to do it? You're going to stop the parking there, you're going to move it 400 yards up the road.
Bus companies should be, sure.
I know there's, well, again, they will say they were we can issue a traffic regulation order and put signs down. But at the end of the day, where do you want the buses to park?
In the school.
We're just feeding into the review.
And that's, but yeah.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, going back to what Councillor Hunt said, I raised this before about the enforcement officers coming out to rural areas away from the free town centres. And I was told, oh yes, they go out. And I asked them for a list of where they'd been. Because people in the rural areas pay council tax as well. People in the rural areas do actually make up the majority, I think, of people who live in Swale. So they should be going, and they should be responding more to councillor priorities. I said, a lot of people, in representing rural areas want to see them out there. And apparently one of the arguments is, you're more likely to have more impact in the town centre because there's more cars.
Easy tickets.
That's not the purpose, though. There is a big other chunk of the borough that needs to be given greater attention.
Okay, and that can be fed back in as well.
Richard.
Yeah, come.
Going back to the parking car parks in the town where you have to go up to, pay up till midnight. I mean, has there been a significant increase in revenue from that decision? Do we know that?
Yes. Yes, I mean, if you look at a local authority, it has a budget, which will be either the council tax or money that it draws in from other sources. And parking revenue, not parking fines, they're ring fenced for other things, but parking revenue also supports council services. It also maintains the car parks and things like that. So any relevant drop in revenue from that side will have a knock-on effect somewhere else. And that's always something you have to consider in the mix.
So are you saying that it's actually brought revenue in by taking it up to midnight?
Yes.
Right. Now, would it be crazy to ask that you say reduce the parking time till say 8 o'clock, where they would only have to pay a couple of pounds to park there? Would you think they would get more people there and they would then continue to use the car park after 8 o'clock?
Don't know.
Because at the moment we're saying, and it's a big town centre that have meetings in the evenings are having to pay a lot of money, or they're not getting their volunteers to run the meetings. Now, if it was a case that they would only pay a couple of pounds rather than £5, you might get more people in and that revenue might increase.
So is that a suggestion?
Yes.
Yeah, could be.
And visitor economy as well, because the bars have spoken to us and they feel with bus services being completely cut.
Oh, there's no buses.
And now the parking charges, it is affecting quite small bars and areas in the town centre.
I think we have to make.
Think about it. You've had feedback.
I think a lot of businesses would say whatever happens, it affects them. But I accept, I think businesses are under a lot of pressure at the moment because there's a lot of cost of increase. But I think if a lot of people are going to go out and have a meal and there's 4 or 5 of them, or they're going out in a group in the pub, they're not going to be that concerned about paying for the parking when they're going to spend 50 or 60 quid out on a meal or something. But the 4-hour issue is a problem.
Yeah.
I think the other anomaly, I can never work it out, and I've asked the question, is 3 hours. Why can't we just park for 3 hours? Why do you have to pay for either 2 hours and then 4 hours?
Just 2 quid or 4 quid after 6.
Whatever.
Can I?
Sorry.
That's exactly what I was going to say. There's other places that do nighttime charge after 6 o'clock and
Yeah.
And some car parks that I've seen that used to have cars in now are empty in the evenings.
Yep. And that has an effect.
So if you bid £1 for a thing, you suddenly get 10 more cars come back.
Yeah.
Now you start.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Some people have suggested that sort of thing from 6 o'clock, some have said from 7 o'clock, and some said do it from 8 o'clock. But that's all part of the mix, and there will be a consultation just to make sure we're getting it right.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I think I've picked up is, so when you talk about on-street parking, the people that give out the on-street parking permits, KCC, aren't they? It's not Swale.
Not the resident parking.
Yeah.
No, that's.
No,
So
resident,
that's, so what do KCC, because I thought they did a permit scheme.
no, they do disabled parking,
Right,
but
okay.
then they come to us and say, can you,
And the other thing is, and make clear, I suppose, is where our policy starts and finishes. And obviously you've got KCC who do something else. So we should actually say disabled parking is dealt with by, so anyone who sees parking was.
well, it's both, because we've put that disabled parking. The confusion is KCC are the highway authority, and they are responsible for the roads and the highways, but they have asked the local boroughs within Kent to enforce them. So really, KCC could take over the whole lot, but they don't. They pass it out to the boroughs.
So there's that element, but also on a lot of our villages or rural areas, and there are housing developments where the road network within the estate is private, and the enforcement and all the parking controls within it are private to the estate. They're nothing to do with Swale, and they're nothing to do with KCC, but I think our policy should make it clear,
Good.
we don't cover that.
Yep.
And it's not our responsibility, because quite often the residents will come to us and say, oh, and I'm like, well, can't do anything about that
Yep.
because it is down to
You're
the
right.
estate management.
It should be clearly identified that we can only enforce on a public highway if there is traffic regulation in order.
And I think so, going back to bus parking, because this just caused huge grief around our hospital, is those buses that park up right opposite. Now, we know the commuter buses no longer run, I don't think anymore, they were cancelled and canned. And so a lot of the commuters used to park on Bell Road further down as you go towards where Borden Sports Ground is, and park along there. That's just free on-street parking. It would be better if we could have some allocated bus days for certain times of day and then moved along so that they don't cause that bottleneck around the hospital and Highstead Road, because you've got the calamity of 3 schools, 4 schools coming out, the hospital traffic, the pharmacy traffic. It's a nightmare along there. And there's several times where I've called the police because you can't get an ambulance through, you can't get a fire engine through, you can't even get a car through there because of the bad parking along Highstead Road. So, I mean, as a parking policy, I think we should say, that element of free on-street parking is not serving us well, and that actually
No.
bus parking would be better suited.
If it was restricted at certain times
Yeah,
for buses,
exactly.
that would then force.
During term time.
Yeah. That's awkward.
Well,
I'd
they can
raise
do
that
zigzag
question,
lines,
'cause
can't they?
term
for term
times are
time?
different. And what,
Yeah.
it's very different to do something like that. Have you captured most of that down? I don't know. Anyone got any more?
Don't we be focusing on the rural?
Well, Western Area
Yeah,
Committee,
It
I
goes
take
into
it,
that.
I mean, some people may well drive to
Yeah.
Sittingbourne Park.
That's all.
That's Woodstock.
It's Woodstock,
Yeah.
or Wood.
Yeah, so.
That's my ward too.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, it will be brought up at all area committees, and obviously it may be more relevant to people in the towns, but if you go into the town, parking is probably going to affect most people. Anyone, anything else? You're more than welcome to feed things back into the council on this, and we'll publish more details later on. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillor. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 7. This is the public forum, and this is where members of the public are enabled to direct questions to the chair or suggest agenda items for future meetings. There is a limit of 20 minutes on this item. Have we got anything from the general public wish to ask me or members here? Anything? I'm quickly to say thank you very much. You had your chance. We move on.
Oh, no, councillor Rath.
Sorry.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, sorry. Councillor.
Hello. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Because I don't know if this microphone works.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, thank you for, I see this is maybe more for the later agenda item, but I noticed that where you've got the access to library of photographs during the update on the walking and cycling project, the active travel coordinator mentioned the photographer commissioned had a bank of about 300 photographs of the Western area. A parish councillor, I assume that's me, asked if these could be made available for community groups to use in their own promotions. The response seems to be Swale Borough Council is working on establishing a library of images accessible to organisations in Swale. The tender is now live and the work started in August 2023. So, is this a sort of a totally separate thing? I mean, I know the original question was purely as we'd commissioned that work, could we just make the photographs available for use? But this almost seems to be as if it's been taken as a separate question. And now there's like a separate task to go and produce a library. When I asked it, I wasn't suggesting spending any more money. I'm aware that the council finances are tight, so I wasn't suggesting spending any more money. I'm just wondering if are they going and getting new photos, or is this the original ones?
I don't know whether, could you turn your microphone? Oh, thank you. Charlotte, did you want me to say something? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
Okay.
further update on what's here.
I believe that there was separately to this, there was already a piece of work had been started, and it's just coincidental that you raised it. So when we asked the question, we found that this piece of work was being done, and that the photos, the Western Area Committee photos, were going to be included in that library. So that it is just coincidental. It was taking place anyway, and it wasn't triggered through your request. It's just a happy coincidence. Yes.
Hi, it's Councillor Bonny. Yeah, I'm under the visitor economy framework. There was an allocation of some money some years ago, and it was one of the pieces of many pieces of work that was to be undertaken. I think when we'd previously looked to do publicity around certain things or to promote the area, we found that the library that we had for Swale, a broader Swale, was pretty limited, and some of the photos were pretty horrific and didn't give a good representation of our lovely area.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's great to know. Just as a suggestion, really, as I've produced leaflets for various different things, of which Mike Baldock will be aware that I've produced some hedgehog leaflets. It's very nice to have photos that are available sort of on a license that all you have to do is credit the source. So I had some very nice hedgehog photos, and on the back of the leaflet in very small print is, photo copyright this Wikipedia page. So I just suggest, in order to help promoting the borough as much as possible, that if those photos are made available under a license, it could be like Creative Commons or something equivalent to Wikipedia, where all the user has to do is just say copyright Swale Borough Council, thank you for the photograph, or what they do on the newspapers where they just say credit Swale Borough Council or something like that, because that would then I guess this isn't attempting to be a money-making scheme. You're not charging licensing fees. So yeah, I'm just saying, be as be as free to use as possible would be my thought on that.
We can feed that back to the officer leading on the tender. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, and sorry I couldn't come along tonight. So thank you for the video call.
Thank you. Any questions again? Very much. We'll move straight on then to agenda item 8, the corporate plan update. And I'm going to invite Councillor Baldock to introduce this item, but also Councillors Bonnie and Palmer. Bonnie and Palmer, they sound like. Yeah. I'm sure there's a one poster out there. I also wish to speak about the update, and we can take a discussion after on the proposed corporate plan priorities. So, Councillor Baldock.
Dennis Richard stood up, I suppose. Yeah, okay, so the corporate plan, as you know, out of date now. We're looking to update it with the new administration. The work has been done, and really we just want some feedback on the proposed priorities. These are sort of like the headline aspects of the corporate plan. On communities, it's to enable our residents to live, work and enjoy their leisure time safely in our borough. I'm not sure these are all, but or an alternative is supporting and enabling our communities. It's really if you think there's a better way of wording that, or if there's a way of encompassing more. Put my glasses on and see if people put their hands up. If people put their hands up. So, does anybody have any feelings about those two, or could they be better worded?
Repeat them again.
Community, to enable our residents to live, work and enjoy their leisure time safely in our borough, or the shorter version, supporting and enabling our communities. You might say, what does that mean? But okay, so you're all happy with that one. Next, right, economy. First one, yeah.
It's more explicit.
Any what?
Well,
Richard?
I mean, all right, I'm chair of communities. I actually like the second one. Because I always think of things to enable our residents to live, work. Well, I'm unemployed, but you said you were going to enable me to work.
Good idea.
You're working now, aren't you?
Well, no, I'm a councillor.
Yeah, but isn't that work?
But do you see what I mean? I just think there's enjoy their leisure time. Well, I'm a miserable person. I'm not enjoying. I just think sometimes
You missed Chris nodding.
Okay, basically the point of it is it enables people who want to. What we're trying to do is enable people to be able to live, work and enjoy their leisure time within the borough without needing to go outside of it. Ross?
I don't think enabled a bit strong. It's like we're allowing them to, or swear we're allowing them to.
What would you suggest instead?
Help about assist. Or
Assist.
Like that, you know.
Assist.
I mean, safely at the moment with all the
Help.
LSP and everything.
Just help
They're
them.
just gonna
Assisting
come
is
back to it, aren't they?
like, you know.
Getting them out of their wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, enabling really means things like ensuring there's proper transport facilities.
Well, that's
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole other.
If we start being specific, they're going to be asking for things like that.
Okay, so we're basically a better word than enable, because that is such a council word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Give it a name.
to support. Enable, help, support. Support? Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Support's okay.
Well, generally we think the first one, or has Richard got an army of second people? Right, so who prefers the first one? 4, 5. Who prefers the second one? 5, no, 4, 6. Right, so it's a bit split. Like going out doing a survey, which like yellow lines? No, yes, no, yes. Right. And you know, oh,
If we just change one or two words, you might get everybody agreeing on one.
yeah, but we're not just feeding into them. We're not
Princess.
Yeah.
just giving feedback. Change.
Quite easily by saying, to support our communities. So that to enable our residents to live, work and enjoy their community.
There's an enable in there.
Oh,
Enabling is when you give somebody the tools to help themselves.
So to support our communities and help our residents live, work and enjoy their leisure time safely in our borough.
That's done. Okay, we'll vote on that. Did you write it down?
You get that, Janet?
I think so, yeah, a bit scribbled, but.
Basically, support our communities and to help, or support our, well, you don't want to support, to help our residents live, work and enjoy their leisure time. That's a bit of feedback. Right, economy. So the short ones first, support a thriving economy, don't say how, but anyway, support a thriving economy. Secondly, support the economy that helps businesses in a sustainable way. Or third, working with our businesses and charitable organisations to improve the economy. I think we structured this one.
I like
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
James?
I like the last one, but the charities
So we got battered in.
have organisations, there's lots of organisations that are charitable.
Yeah.
They remove charitable.
Well, we've got a unanimous almost, I think, on that.
So working with our businesses and
Organisations.
And organisations, yes, it covers charities then.
so other organisations.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
This is an organisation.
Yeah.
Businesses and organisations. Right, environment. To prepare our borough for the challenges ahead. Or to provide I think this is, this is one, isn't it? It's been turned into two. To prepare our borough for the challenges ahead, to provide a cleaner, healthier, more enjoyable environment. Well, just have that one as a, yeah, I think that's what it should be, yeah. It makes sense.
Yes,
Do
that
you
makes
need
sense.
an end?
To
Yeah.
prepare our borough for the challenges ahead and to provide a cleaner, healthier, more enjoyable
That's
environment.
good,
Yeah, we like that?
Yeah.
James?
You've got another issue with the provide bit, because we might not be able to provide it. It's
So
down
you
to
might be
other people.
enabling it.
If we say providing, people will be expecting.
Work for, work towards,
And work towards.
work towards.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Strive.
Strive. And to help prepare our borough for challenges ahead. And
Yeah.
to work towards a cleaner, healthier, more enjoyable environment. Okay. Excellent. Health and housing.
This is very, very controversial. You can't get housing, how are you gonna do it?
Go on and read it out.
Everyone to have access to a decent home and improved health and well-being. I think this is the one I didn't have a prepared statement for. What?
You give them away for free.
Yep. I think we did have problems working
We
on
did
how
have
we were going to
problems with
put this one into words, so.
I think it was very much an aspiration, wasn't it? As in working towards people having access to decent homes.
I mean,
the
that's
framework within
wonderful,
it.
but
Yeah.
it sounds like, yes, everyone's gonna be queuing up tomorrow for their keys.
Yeah. I want the access to a decent home and then have some improved health and well-being whilst you're at it. So how do we feel we could better
The
work?
two don't go together hand in hand, because you build lots and lots and lots and lots more houses for people to live in. We haven't got the doctors or the health service that can cope with all the extra people in the new houses.
Yep. So,
We've got conflict immediately.
yeah, lots of criticism. Let's have some ideas for Janet to write down. Because that's the Health and Housing Committee. Because we spent 4 hours going around
Yes.
discussing things. And we came out with four topics that just happened to be our committees.
And if Councillor Harrison was here, she'd tell us that the whole reason councils were set up was around
Yeah.
the health and well-being of residents
Yeah.
and to improve them. So
Public health it was.
public health, yeah. Hope she's listening.
So,
Do something like improve.
To enable.
No.
everyone,
In terms of the
current corporate plan, and obviously this is a refresh of that, it is more around affordability of housing and availability.
Has anybody suggest anything from one of the other groups?
And decent.
Well, it's sort of the first one.
Yeah, so let them talk about one.
And about our roles within health, our influencing role and the activity that we do to improve health and wellbeing, and not be a detrimental impact by the decisions that the council makes. It's kind of down that road, isn't it?
Or that the word facilitate.
What's
Use it somewhere in there.
Consider something like aspire to improve housing, health and well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Facilitate,
Or do we want to be more specific, say affordable?
Yeah.
Because everything.
Well, no, we want to improve all housing, don't we? We want to improve more.
You want to improve someone that's got a 4 or 5 bedroom house. Do they need improvement? I'm sorry, but.
That's improved health and well-being. What was it again you said, Ross?
Aspire to improve access to housing, health and well-being.
Yeah, you got that? Janet's got that. We all happy with that?
That's.
Well,
No.
because we've got
That's
things
not-
like staying put, so actually you might have someone who's lived in their house but needs adaptations. So
Yeah.
it's about having a lifetime house, isn't it? And property that will adapt to your needs as
So
you.
you're.
What about if we went to fight for suitable and sustainable housing across the borough and improved health and well-being? Well, we can change that word, fine. Campaign, pledge, work, aspire.
That's fine.
Health, doesn't that involve
Did you get
working
that,
with
Jen?
other agencies?
You recorded, fortunately.
Fun?
The improved health, doesn't that include working with other agencies?
Oh, yes.
So shouldn't that be included in there to work with other agencies?
That is, I think that is one of the, yes,
That
not
comes
running the
later.
council.
Doesn't
Yeah.
that come later on? So this is just the
This is-
headline.
this is what we wanna
and that
do.
Fills it
Yeah.
out.
And then running the council is how we do that. And
Although,
that is,
yeah, so
doing-
80% of health issues are the wider determinants of health. So literally decisions that everybody else makes can have a greater impact than the work that the NHS does in terms of improving health.
But being on that committee, I'm aware that a lot of it is liaising with health.
Yeah.
And pushing them. Got the power to provide the GPs.
so the summary bit is
Sorry, Mike.
running the council. And that is to engage with communities and outside bodies to deliver our priorities in an open and efficient way, working within our resources.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that one? That's a good
Yeah.
Good afternoon. I sat down and wrote these out. wasn't I? Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Well done.
Would the other councillors like to say anything, or are they happy with Councillor Baldock's presentation?
Well, I suppose all I'd say in summary is that obviously the corporate plan sets out our corporate priorities, and from that, everything else should follow, all our other policies. So whether it's, regeneration, communities, all of those should sit under that and follow through. So it is an important piece of work that we get back.
So have we got any more questions regarding the corporate plan priorities?
Is it every committee? Okay.
Every area.
Yes, thank you. So,
Yeah.
It makes it more complicated. You end up with that 16 options.
Okay, that's that ended the corporate plan update. Thank you very much. We're moving on to agenda item number 9, matters arising, and we're looking at the state of play of the items that we've had in the past, updates and comments. Okay, so the first one is the youth provision in villages. I've got a notice to ask Charlotte for updates.
Yeah, so I have spoken to Brockdale CIC, because there were some clarification questions from their written update last time. So I think one of the issues that came up was around sort of contact with parish councils and which parish councils had been contacted. So it wasn't all the parish councils within the area, but it was the larger ones that he attended. He did make approach to a number of councils, but mainly put posters up and social media because it was more about engaging with the young people. And the report that was received last time kind of highlighted sort of the areas and locations that they carried out most of the work. I think one of the other issues that was sort of raised last time was what happens next. And unfortunately, I think youth service provision is in a state of review at the moment. Kent County Council are undertaking and have a live consultation currently to look at that provision and the sort of family hubs model in particular. That has indicated that there would be a reduction in and no commission services that Brogdale currently provide. There would just be the sort of provision that KCC provides. So the feedback from Brogdale was, without obviously a main contract, it would be very difficult for them to do their standard work, let alone any add-on work. And I think that's just one of the concerns that they have at the moment, is what the ability is, and obviously the ability to support young people in that way. And therefore encouraged people to review said consultation.
I'm really keen that we do keep this work going somehow. I think I funded some this summer as well, but is it worth? This is worth, I think, the parishes, because you actually get quite a good deal for not an awful lot of money. So maybe it's worth maybe referring to Calc, or when I have a meeting with the parish councils in the county area. But if they were, if like 2 or 3 parishes were able to contribute, then you could get some summer provision, especially because some of the smaller parishes, it's probably not, sadly, not enough young people for them to go out to. And yet those young people still need, still to be included. So maybe grouping parishes work together. They could, I think we've got people going out for like 800 quid, didn't we? And they were going out all over the summer in some areas.
Yeah, I mean, they are very, good value for money, youth workers. And I'm absolutely sure that if we can follow up with Rebecca O'Neill from Brogdale CIC, and I'm sure she'd be very happy to come to a CAP meeting or follow it up in some way. So I can take that away.
That's a good idea. I think we should. Can you put her name on the minutes?
I can send it to you. I think.
Okay.
Is that your advice?
Rebecca.
Councillor Hunt.
I think it'll be good to know the outcome of everything I did. This was in the last meeting, I couldn't make that one, but I know from talking to the leaders, it was well attended.
Yeah.
And that they did say that in their view that it would be good to carry on that. And they said that they built up some data and everything so they can go forward. So if there is funding comes up, they can then start looking at that. Yeah, it'd be good to know exactly what parishes were. So if there is a parish council they can go to, and so there are 50 people turned up over the time or something, it's well worth doing it. I think if we get those figures from them, it might be helpful.
Yeah, there was a dashboard of data that she also sent me, but it was a little bit higher than that. So we could certainly go back and ask, see if it can be broken down.
It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be quite happy if it came back to Weston, if she came to Weston with that breakdown, because obviously I'm on a parish council, there's quite a few other parish councils here. And I'm sure that some of them will consider that, and we could maybe drag a few of their reps here or invite them, the parish councils, to come along and see whether they'd be willing to look at that and take that forward.
Okay. Great. Okay. The next item is the Bredgar and Hartley Conservation Area reviews. We've put that forward, so we can move straight on to the donation to food banks, provide service to residents in the Western area. Yeah, well, there's only one I think we're looking to get some feedback from, and that was the bus shelter food bank. Although they have distributed 42 food parcels, as of June. So we're just waiting to get some feedback from them as to how many more they've used and what they've done with the money. So we are still following that one. The next one is item 4, supporting residents to reduce their energy costs. Yes, if you can do it.
Yeah.
Janet.
Okay, so I checked with the Fuel and Water Home Advisor, and she said that over the summer, requests for energy advice had been low, but she's preparing to spend the remaining funding on more packs, ready to start issuing in October to December. She's going to let me know once she's purchased them and is ready to start again, and I'll let you all know then so that you can promote them within your wards. As you come in, there's some leaflets there if you want to hand those out. I think I've sent some of you who've asked the PDFs of those leaflets so that they can be circulated as well. But certainly we're just getting ready between October and December to issue the last of them and spend the remaining £2,235.
Thank you. I think that has been, yeah, Rose Hill and Leeds Woodland Management work plans. Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I don't know why the Rose Hill Woodland Friends Group is going to the October 2023 council meeting. We've been up and running for over a year. We've had our first annual meeting. There was never a request from that body for a official councillor position. This came up because the Leeds Woodland had asked for a official councillor position on it, but the Friends of Rose Hill have been operating without one, and that's not part of our terms of reference.
We can amend that, can't we? So if they're not requesting one, we won't support. So, yeah.
Councillor Hunt.
And I'll say that as the Leeds Woodland, we haven't had anything. It was in the past, we were asked about information. We had to get insurance first, which was the problem. We've got insurance, but I've not heard anything to get the information for the October meeting. So we can sort that out, but no one's requested anything.
Have you had the funding for £3,000 from us in the Western area? Yeah, good. So we're out of date now. We'll have to fiddle it.
Some ages ago.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Can I just make one comment? When Councillor Baldock raised this, I did look back through minutes, and at the meeting, the September meeting last year, it was something that members here did ask for, that a borough councillor sits on each of the friends groups. The reasoning is because the area committee at the time would like them to feed back to give an annual report, and they felt that it would be perhaps the friends groups would not feel comfortable doing that themselves, hence have the borough councillor on the friends group. But if that has changed, if the view has changed, then maybe if that's agreed this evening to change that, then I can minute it going forward. But I'll leave that to you to propose.
Well, I suppose that change for the Friends of Rose Hill is quite the terms of reference.
Do you need a second for that? Yes. That's it from there. That's coming on. Thank you.
I'm happy to update you.
Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yeah, great.
Anyone disagree? That's all right.
And does Leeds want to do the same, or is Leeds happy?
I discussed it with others and they're happy that there's someone on there. They said that they would like to, because it's the obviously Swale Borough Council owned land. They want to be able to keep that connection in there somehow. And even as I'm on there at the moment, if I'm not in the future or anyone changes hands, there's always someone that's going to be connected to
Councillor Baldock.
Will that affect their ability to raise funds from third parties?
I don't believe so. I think it's an outside body appointment. It's
Right.
the actual status of the organisation applying for funding that is fine. Sometimes there could be an issue with it being the council land, but a lot of groups don't, and depending on what the I'm not familiar with the actual arrangements in terms of that. But friends groups can normally raise funds, as long as they've got the right constitution.
It'll be the same setup basically as Milton Creek.
Yeah.
You've got friends in Milton Creek as well. Also got the actual park.
Actually, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item is the walking and cycling project. Great success that was, and I think there's a little bit at the bottom here that says we now have a template for creating more swale trails in the future. So I hope that we continue with that.
Are the leaflets still on the third floor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got stocks if people want to take a handful as well, so.
Okay. I didn't want to put anything.
I've got plenty on.
I say notice board, go to number 34.
Yeah, no, we've got all the maps. And more.
Great. Item 7, heritage issues.
Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
on those leaflets, it says we will start a social media campaign. I think we just want to check that the leaflets are going to be updated with all the social media connections on the leaflets. So at the moment, there's no website reference because obviously it wasn't live and it hadn't been put on there. But when they publish them, all of them, that the appropriate website links and social media links are on there. And if you could email members when that goes live, because I think we'd all like to push them in our area, so with the links.
Perhaps we could have a PDF.
Yeah.
If Janet, we could, do a PDF.
I think the idea is the website has the PDF on it,
Yes.
so you can print it out at home.
I know, but that's, if the clerks have got, it could be just working straight out.
Yeah, well, you have the link. Just take it through.
Yeah, I think you can download it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the idea on the website.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, item 7, heritage issues. Have we got any updates on that, or is it
No,
just?
just the update that's on the third column. It's the same update for all four.
Right, okay. Okay, the conservation, yeah, I'm gonna read it out for us and then you can make a comment.
All right, okay,
Give me
so
something.
moving on.
The adopted versions of the conservation area appraisal document are now published on the Swale Borough Council website, along with the links to the latest maps of the conservation areas. All formalities regarding notifications to local residents and parish council, local newspaper and the London Gazette are complete. So, good news. Yes, Councillor Baldock.
Can we have an update at the next meeting regarding heritage listing opportunities in Weston? It's live, but if there was focusing on certain areas, I don't, and we want to push, see if we can push that out next year and encourage just, more of a take up.
Yeah, item 8, Forster Manor School students parking. I think this one crosses over what Councillor Palmer was saying. A letter's been sent to the Forster Manor School and no response has been received today. But part of that problem was Eden Village, which is a private company running the estate. But it also impacts on the roundabout, which is along Swan Street. And I think, we should forward another one saying that we are seriously concerned, although we cannot fine them, I don't think, because again, they're parking on the pavement, they're parking close to the roundabout, the actual curve of the road, parking right on there. So is there a limit to how far you can park close to a junction? I thought it was about.
It's
15
not
minutes.
highway code, I think it's
Yeah.
15 feet.
Yeah,
15 foot, when I used to assess for disabled parking bays, we couldn't have any within 15 feet.
so that's the first part of the bend, isn't it? Yeah.
Who did you write
Yeah,
to?
yeah.
Head teacher?
Head teacher, yeah.
Can we write to the chair of governors?
Yes.
Because say that you've written to the head teacher and you've had no response, so we are now writing to you.
Yeah. So inclusive of some antisocial behaviour towards residents as well.
Yeah.
That are complaining to them.
And
So-
It's academy, isn't it? It's to the head of the academy trust.
Yes, so I think it's obviously getting no response, is not good enough. Okay, I think we've already touched on this one, access to library photos.
Yeah.
Images. So we're happy with the answer to that one, that's good. Okay. Moving on to agenda item, sorry.
We said before that I've got an issue that would probably fit in quite neatly here.
Yes,
So could I?
this, we can take that under the next item, which is local issues to be raised.
Fine.
You just got in there before I could say it. See, we work well together, yeah, you read my mind. Right, okay, local issues to be raised, so it's this opportunity for members, if there's anything they'd like to raise on behalf of local residents and communities. Councillor Pam.
Right, thank you. On 22nd of August, I was fortunate enough to have been invited to attend Newington History Group stuff. World War One defences board launched. I was there along with Councillor Paul Stevens, Councillor Sarah Stevens, Councillor Chris Palmer and Councillor Richard Palmer at the launch. We were treated to a short presentation, and then the Stevens and I and others went on a walk through the countryside past two of the boards. The members I spoke the members of the history group I spoke to were very knowledgeable and I learnt a lot. The history group, which is the point of me bringing it here, were very appreciative of the grant that the Western Area Committee had given them and were keen to show up the two of the information boards, and they even offered to take us up to a toolbox, which was part of the World War One defences. It was lovely to see the end product of our grant. It's just nice to see something positive. And thank you. I think there's a rep from Newington somewhere, but thank you for making us so welcome and thank you for the invitation.
It's lovely to get some good feedback that Swell Borough Council are interested in at least doing something. And that was, we really were made to feel appreciated.
It's lovely to be there as mayor
Yeah.
as well, to sort of.
And as chair of Western Area Committee as well, because we provided a lot of funding for it, so it was great. It was just
Well
one of
done,
those
you
days
to pass that
where
on.
got feedback instantly.
We're going to make sure the defences are well maintained, and try and keep the houses out.
That's it.
Good luck there.
They say they don't like it up. Yeah. Okay, have we got any more local issues that need to be raised? No, that's great. Agenda item 11, matters referred to area committees by service committees, and I'm not aware of any at the present time. Agenda item 12, matters referred to service committee chairs for consideration, and again, I'm not aware. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Go on, yeah.
because I'm really under 11. I'm not sure why this item is on the agenda, because any matter that is referred to us would be an agenda item, like the parking. But it would be, yeah, it would be a part of body of the agenda. So this seems to be, I don't know, Joe.
I can take it off. Future, do you feel the same about item 12? Because
No, this is where we get the chance to say, can the area.
Yeah.
We don't want to lose that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a new start.
Tell them to not go in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You tell them that.
Okay, that's the last item. The next area committee is taking place on the 30th of November, 2023. But I have one, say, personal item. It's not personal to me, but it's, I'm going on a sponsored cycle ride, all around Western area, onto 10 churches. Yeah, so it's a case of, myself and a few others. It's done by the Ride and Stride for Churches, and the money's raised, it's going to go to the churches, or 50% of it goes to the nominated church, and the rest of it is distributed around all the churches. The idea, I mean, it was David Ridley at St Michael's Church that told me about this, and I thought, what a great idea. All I've got to do is sit on my bike and pedal and raise some money. So I am looking for sponsors. They're telling me that we're only be doing 10 churches. So it could be a penny a church, it could be £1 a church, it could be £10 a church. If anyone is interested in sponsoring myself to cycle.
Is that all on one day?
Yeah, won't take long. They're saying it's going to take from 10:30 to 3:30. And we're going to finish up somewhere near a church that's got a pub next to it. But no, that's just. No, yeah, we're going to actually see where we're going to start.
Just giving.
Yeah.
It's got paper.
Yeah.
Now, we're starting at Bobbing. We're doing Ironwade, Lower Howstow, Upchurch, Newington, 2 in Hartley, 2 in Stockbury, which is not.
Stockbury's the only one that's not.
Yeah, and 1 in Borden, and then back to Bobbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's these.
Yeah, because, yeah.
So we can nominate a church out of them, and half of the money we give goes to that church, and the other half goes to the other 9.
Only just cycling, yeah.
I think.
I can do that.
Oh, you can.
I can do that because I'm the one that's doing the work.
Oh, which one are you donating your half to?
No, I'm going to go to.
Do it as well if he gets
No, I
it.
don't think it goes.
I know, I want to get 5.
To the Kent Church.
Yeah, down.
It's a church group, isn't it, Sharon?
Yes,
It's the Kent churches. It's the whole of Kent.
yeah,
We're doing it.
Well done, Paul.
right, so,
Is that meeting closed?
yeah, I'm sorry, we close the meeting.
Meeting closed, then he asked.
Yeah. So, it's now minuted, sorry. No. So,
I can't drink, it's being very gentle.
if anyone wishes to just give me your name and details and I'll put it on here.
Yeah, no, fine.